What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Horrorheads podcast. I am Rich Mallery here with my co-host Jerry Lourenco.
Let's fucking do this.
All right, I like to see you coming in hot again. Right?
That's it.
I feel like every time we do one of these, you get a little more amped, so that's good.
I'm excited about tonight.
Yeah, we're talking about some movies that I know you personally love. I do as well, so super stoked to get into those. Let's see. Today is episode number 8. Which, again, crazy. We say this every episode, but the fact that we did more than one, the fact that we did one is nuts. The fact that now we're up to number 8 and you're going to keep going. So that's great. So tonight we are going to talk about The Strangers and The Strangers Pray at Night, just in advance of the new Strangers Chapter 1 coming out on May 17th. So we're going to get back into the original films and talk about those. Before we get into kind of drinking, for those of you who don't know or haven't listened to this podcast before, a big thing of what we do is we do tend to drink a lot of bourbon, and we're going to get into that in a second. A little bit of housekeeping. If anyone wants to contact us, send us hate mail, love mail, whatever. It is horrorheadspodcast@gmail.com. Tell us how much we suck. We want to hear it. Let's go.
I said, I think ever since I put my picture up, we would get more hate mail than usual. So
it's the hat. They don't like the hats that you wear.
Yeah. Like, fuck that guy.
Like, who's this guy with the fucking hats? Like, who does he think he is?
Such a dick.
New York cab driver? Like, who is this guy? Okay, so I was just telling Jerry I just ate a chicken parm and had a ton of garlic, so I'm really needing to drink some whiskey to kind of knock out that terrible garlic taste that's in my mouth. And tonight what I have is something different I've never purchased before. It is called a Fistful of Bourbon. It is 90 proof. Apparently it blends 5 straight bourbon whiskeys, and it is crafted with over 100 years of whiskey blending experience. And if you're able to like see the video of this, I opened this bottle on Cinco de Mayo, which was it 2 days ago, and it is more than 2/3 empty. However, I do not recall what this even tastes like, so I'm excited to pour it and actually taste it.
Yeah, you don't have much left. I think tonight's to be subdued, so maybe it'll get you through.
Yeah, on Cinco de Mayo, like I wasn't tasting, I was guzzling, so I don't remember what this tastes like. So I'm gonna pour it now and see what happens. What do you got there?
I got this.
Heaven's Door. Is that the Bob Dylan bourbon?
Heaven's Door. So it's Bob Dylan collab. So I decided today that I hate myself, and I'm going to torture myself by drinking this horrible bourbon that I don't really like. So that's
interesting.
My plan.
You know, it's funny. It's like so far all the bourbons we've drank have been ones that I know I've enjoyed all of mine, and you've enjoyed all of yours. So actually, I don't know much about Heaven's Door. Is Bob Dylan actually involved with anything, or is just put his name on it?
Nah, it's supposed to be a collab with him and some bourbon distillery. This is the Highway 61 blend, which is a pretty high proof. It's 94 proof. I don't like it. Every sip is like a punch to the stomach. It's a very spicy taste. I like spice in food. I don't like spice in my drinks. So it's like a spicy rye taste. It's peppery. It's not for me, but I am going to drink it tonight, and I'm hoping, I don't know if you can see here.
You got a lot left. Yeah.
I'm trying to get through it, man. I just want this to be over with, and why not today?
So what's one thing that's interesting before I actually taste this bourbon is on the back, they actually tell you the flavors that you are supposed to taste. And I'm going to read those off because it's a lot, and I probably will taste none of them. But one is this green leafy floral, soft spices, hints of nutmeg, buttery toffee, cinnamon, licorice. That's basically every flavor you could think about, but let's see if I get any of those. And I probably will get this tastes like whiskey and I won't even notice, but let's see.
Yeah, you definitely get some nutmeg in there for sure.
get fisted with bourbon. Oh, wait. All right. Cheers.
Well, cheers. Oh, this is disgusting. Oh, man.
So what is it? What's disgusting about it? Like,
it tastes like someone sprinkled like black pepper on top of my drink, and it's not a breakfast drink, so I don't prefer, like a spicy peppery taste. A lot of rye in there, which is okay when I'm drinking rye, but it just comes off being crafty, spicy, and peppery, which individually was probably okay, but together I'm just not feeling this. And you want to know what? This was a lot of fucking money, man. This was like a $75 bottle, I think. So I'm just really upset with myself, and I just want to get rid of it.
Fuck Bob Dylan is what I'm saying.
Yeah. How's yours? Tell me what you taste. Do you taste the nutmeg?
Let me do it again. Hold on. So I would say I'm also not a huge fan of this bourbon. At first, it comes off, and I think I get that toffee kind of flavor at first. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of sweet. It's kind of got that buttery taste to it, but the aftertaste is not great. I'm getting, again, it's not like rye, but it's basically covering the back of my throat with something I don't like. I can't describe what it is, but I wouldn't buy this one again. It's not terrible. Like I'm not suffering like you are right there, but I'm glad I tried it, but I would never buy this again. And all that said, it was under $30, so it's a cheap bottle at least, so I don't feel.
That helps.
Yeah, and again, I could put it in. I would probably be fine mixing it in something like I'm gonna drink it straight because that's just what I do. But if I really was desperate, I would probably put this. I don't know what I would mix it with, but something. But yeah, I'm not a huge
Taste any
fan.
nutmeg?
I do not taste any nutmeg, which I like the taste of nutmeg. I'm not gonna lie.
Remember that time you tried to smoke that nutmeg and you went a little crazy?
Just one time. I think I did that a couple times actually.
And like couldn't control your hand for some reason. I don't remember what happened exactly.
You know what? Like it's funny. Like and my parents listen to this show and whatever. But like I remember one time, I would say that one of the craziest or weirdest things I ever smoked is I smoked taki dust one time.
I don't even know what that is.
You talk, you know, Takis?
Is that from? Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the very first time I tried a Taki, I was like nervous because I'm not a big spicy fan. And I remember I had Takis and I was like, at first it was spicy, like I couldn't handle it. Now it's like not a big deal. But the first time I had one, I couldn't handle it. And I might have had a few and I was like, I'm gonna smoke this shit. And I sprinkled it on something and
Wow.
took a puff and
what happened?
Nothing.
Oh.
I'm here. Everything is fine. But so you can do it. It's not toxic if you really want to. And you could taste it when you smoked it. So that was interesting.
I would like to put some taki dust on top of this bourbon right now because I think that would probably help it out. But I think the one thing that's pretty good is I don't particularly have any drinking games planned for tonight. So hopefully I just don't get nervous and drink a lot.
Which I've already like finished half my glass. I don't know how that happened.
Just without even paying attention, I could just get excited and just kind of drink without paying attention. So that's probably the only way I'm going to get through this nasty bottle tonight.
Yeah, so for those of us who haven't listened to every episode of this show, which is crazy because you should listen to every episode of the show, but we do play, there's one long-standing drinking game that we play, and I'll talk about in a second, but we do kind of throw in some side drinking games that we surprise each other with from time to time. And yeah, I agree. I don't have one tonight either. So we're just going to play the classic Horrorheads drinking game. And what that is Jerry and I are going to discuss two movies tonight. We're going to discuss The Strangers and Strangers Pray at Night. I'm just going to say Strangers instead of The Strangers. It's kind of easier, and I'm going to start getting buzzed soon. We're going to discuss those two movies, and after we finish each discussion in depth, we're going to rate those movies 0 to 5. We go with bloody knives, not stars. And the number of bloody knives that I give a movie is the number of sips that Jerry needs to drink, and vice versa. The number of bloody knives he gives is the number of seconds, sorry, I need to drink. And if you're playing along at home, you could either choose one of us to drink with, or drink with both of us if you're feeling up to it. So that's kind of how Horrorheads works. And no surprises tonight, just a good discussion. But before we kind of get into The Strangers, I do want to talk about a couple of movies that I saw recently that I feel compelled to talk about. And the first movie is a movie that you might not have heard of, and I kind of wish I never heard of it, but it's called Sasquatch Sunset. Have you heard of it?
Man, I normally love Sasquatch movies, but I don't think I've seen that one because I actually seek them out. I'm a huge fan of Sasquatch and Bigfoot and anything like that.
You might actually love this movie then. It's a movie I have not stopped thinking about since I've seen it. It's actually in theaters now. It just came out. And what Sasquatch Sunset is it's a year in the life of a family of 4 Sasquatches, and basically what happens to them throughout a year. And what's interesting about the movie and why it stuck with me is there's 4 Sasquatches. One is actually played by Jesse Eisenberg, believe it or not. With really cool. Yeah, exactly. You would never know though. The makeup is amazing. And they're the only characters in the movie. There's no humans in the movie. You see remnants of humans, but you don't actually see humans. And there's no dialogue. It's just grunting and noises, and they just communicate in that way. But you get into the vibe of it because you don't really even think about it because movie is a vibe. And again, it starts off in the spring and goes all the way through the winter. And there's some comedic moments, there's some sad moments. It's kind of like a comedy drama, I guess. It's hard to like pinpoint this movie. I haven't stopped thinking about the movie, but it is very difficult for me to recommend for a few reasons. And the main one is it's fucking gross. If you think of anything gross that's in this movie, like there's Sasquatch cock, there's like Sasquatches fucking, shitting, pissing, breastfeeding, puking, like you name it, and they do it. And there were so many times in this movie where I like literally thought I was gonna fucking throw up. I was like, oh my God, like it was cringy. And the people I went with were the only people in the theater, surprisingly. I mean, not surprisingly, but it was hard to, it was like hard. Some of it was really hard to watch. And I even read that when it actually played at Sundance and people walked out. Like it's a tough one. It is gnarly. And like it's one thing if they show like Sasquatch cock once, they show it throughout the entire movie. Like you can't not see it. Like it's there. It's just, and it's like it's there the entire movie. You see it erect. It's this movie's fucking bizarre. But like again, it's I appreciate what they did because I've never seen a movie like this ever. Like it's on its own, and it was executive produced by the guy who did Midsummer, Ari Aster. So like it has some kind of like name recognition to it. And again, Jesse Eisenberg is one of the actors. The lead actress is Riley Keough, I think is how you pronounce it. She's like a singer, actress, or whatever. But yeah, it was a fucking bizarre, wild movie, and I can't stop talking about it. But yet I'm telling people don't go see it because it's so gross. But yet I'm telling them about it. So it's an interesting one. Make up your own choices. But if you do watch it, like just be in mind you're like going to see something pretty gnarly and disgusting that you might not want to see and you can't unsee. The other movie I saw last night that was really good was Immaculate. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
So this movie was not at all what I expected, and I thought it was incredible. It was really good. It's about it stars Sydney Sweeney, and she plays this really young nun who goes off to this convent where it's basically a convent where sick and mentally ill nuns go to die, and they basically take care of these nuns in this beautiful convent in Italy. And what ends up happening is Sydney Sweeney's character discovers that she's pregnant even though she's a virgin, and she may or may not be carrying the Messiah. And that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to give anything away.
Wow.
But no, it's really good. It's like really artistic. It's well shot. It's brutal at times. Like there's some violent kills in it. It's creepy. The ending has got me rocked. It was just a crazy ending. And it's not like it's not like it's like religious horror, but it's more like folk horror, I think. It's hard to describe. It reminded me a lot of a modern Suspiria. That's kind of how it felt. It was very Suspiria, like I'm sure that was an influence on this movie. And it also reminded me of, well, not the same movie or even about the same thing. Tonally, it reminded me of that movie, The Orphanage. That I believe it just for whatever reason it reminded me of how that movie like was told and how it was shot. I highly recommend Immaculate. It was really good.
Interesting. Wow. I mean, two tough choices there. You have like a Sasquatch cock or some sort of religious horror. I think I'm gonna lean towards Sydney Sweeney and check that one out. I
Yeah,
think
I don't think you're
I'm
gonna like the
leaning
other
towards
one.
that.
I would recommend Immaculate. And I know religious horror isn't your thing, but I think you would like this movie because it's really well done. It's like it's different. It's very different, and I liked it.
Well, what I'd like to add is what I do like about Sasquatch is the horror part. So like when it's like tracking down and killing people and stuff like that. So these the day in the life of a Sasquatch. I don't know if that's my thing or if it ever will be. So I'm probably going to skip that one just in case. I mean, maybe one night, really bored. It's really late.
If you're really
And
high, maybe
yeah,
like you
there's
check it
nothing
out.
going on and I'll check it out. But outside, I don't think I'm gonna seek it out.
No, I wouldn't recommend it. I would not tell you to watch it, but I just can't stop talking about it. But yeah, see Immaculate. How about you? Have you seen anything?
I did. So this might blow some minds here. I don't even know if you know this, but I watched something this week that I never saw before. It's a classic. And I'm so mad at myself for not watching this because I loved it. And I ignored it all these years because I thought it was stupid and I just didn't know enough about it. So I saw an American Werewolf in London.
Oh shit.
I never saw it before in my life, and I have to say, I love this movie. It had such a great mood, and the cinematography and the location was just amazing. And then like the actors and the soundtrack, it was probably one of the best movies I ever saw. And what I normally don't like is I probably thought it was probably a little bit too much comedy. But when I saw it, it really wasn't. Like, it was a good blend. And I don't know if I'm just more open to like comedy mixed in my horror, but this was perfect. And
You know what? That's like I completely get where you're coming from because that was one that I did resist watching for a very long time. I had no interest. I did not want to see it. Like I didn't care. I like, knew it was a classic and I'd seen the transformation makeup effects before in various like horror like basically when there's like a horror show talking about the top 100 movies, they always show it. And I thought that was cool, but yeah, I never cared to see it. And then I did watch it. I might have actually seen this with my dad once. Like I think we just rented it or something. I forget what. But I remember I did not really, I was like, oh, he'll watch this, fine, I'll watch a horror movie. And I really liked it too. And I haven't seen it since, but I did like I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it, and I did not think I was gonna like it. So I completely with you. Like in my 20s, like refused to watch it. And then one day I was like, yeah, all right, fine, whatever. I might as well see this, check it off the list. And I was like, holy shit, this is actually really good.
so something came up in this film, which comes up in a lot of films, and I want to get your opinion on it, see what you think. So there was a long shower scene in this film where David, and he gets released from the hospital and he stays with the nurse for a while, and she has like a crush or something on him. I don't know if any of this is familiar with you,
I
but
don't remember very much. So yeah.
okay. So there's like this long shower scene. It's probably like 3 or 4 minutes, no nudity. Then immediately after, there's like a long sex scene. So they're in bed and they're rolling around. There's no nudity, which I find very strange because like it's a big part of this film. It's probably this both of these scenes together probably take up close to 10 minutes. Now, there's this one scene where David goes to meet his friend that died, Jack, the zombie, whatever version of him. He goes to like an adult theater and there's a porno playing in the background and they show nudity in the film in the background. So what I want to know is that count as nudity? Because I gave it a name. I call it secondhand nudity.
I like
And
that.
I just
I like
I
that.
want to know if it's in a film, does that count? Or is it just like, ambience and background?
So that's a really good question. And I think I would go back. At first, I'm like, oh, that counts. But now that I'm thinking about it, does it count though? Because I want to see the actors in the movie, right? Not just a random porno they found that, that's it. Yeah, that's a good call. I do like that secondhand nudity. I think I would count that, but with that asterisk, like it does have secondhand nudity. Yeah, I that's interesting you say how they like would put nudity in the film, so it's going to get an R rating, but yet they neglected to for these scenes. And I'm assuming it had something to do with, the actress they wanted wouldn't do it, or they would have to pay her more or something like that. And I'm sure there was some logistical reason, or maybe it was one of those things where when was that movie? Like 1982?
It's like 81, 82. Yeah.
81, 82. Like I don't know, maybe if like when they were thinking about it, they're like, okay, well, this like maybe I don't think they were trying to get a PG rating or whatever, but maybe they thought it would be less likely for the MPAA to kind of freak out if it was, since there is like a lot of violence in the movie and MPAA was cracking down on that kind of stuff. Maybe they're like, you know what, they'll let us pass on this other shit. We do want to have some boobs in there, but like we're gonna have it on a screen. So I'm sure there was some artistic decision. We'll have to research that.
I just find it so strange that they spent so much time on these other scenes, like where they could have probably just cut them short. But I mean, they were. I'm just like, what is going on here? This is taking forever. But like cutting it in such a way, or I don't know how they do it. You probably know how they do it. That like when they actually kind of show like the actors' bodies, it is so dark right there. I don't know if they have some sort of light that like will kind of negate the ambient light. I don't know how they do it, but it just looks like nothing. It looks like a void. So I don't know how they did that, but that's
Yeah,
what
they're
it
just
looked
playing with
like.
shadows, really. They're just lighting it so that shadows fall in a certain spot. You know, it's funny, like when you talk about like a 3-minute shower scene where you don't see anything, and again, you're just like, what's the point of having this long shower scene if you're not going to show anything? It makes me think of that movie Kill Her Goats. And like there is nudity in that movie, but there are like probably 5-minute shower scenes where it's literally the same shot of nothing, and you're just like, what is this here other than to kill time? Like, and then it's like you see them naked later on, so it's like, well, what was the big deal? Like, why couldn't you do it in that scene? And or like, why are you spending so much time on this? Like that movie is full of weird scenes like that. Such a bizarre movie.
It is weird. It's like, oh, look, a soapy abdomen. You know, it's
For
like
3 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like why show it? You know, just don't show, don't just cut it out, cut it
And I,
out,
and
you
I might
know?
be wrong because I haven't seen this movie in a while, but Killer Goats, I believe like this happens multiple times where there's like, okay, there's one girl in the shower for 5 minutes, and then like later on there's another girl. Yeah, it's like the same thing. It's like, why are you even doing this? But whatever. Not that that was a bad movie. Well, it was a bad movie, but not that that movie wasn't entertaining. But I always found that kind of funny.
I love that movie, but it was a terrible movie.
Oh, it's
But I
awful.
loved
It's
it.
awful,
Yeah.
but like you get into it's a vibe. That movie is a vibe for sure. All right, cool. So let's talk about Strangers. And so as I said earlier, there is a new Strangers Chapter 1 coming out May 17th. I know you said you already bought your tickets to go see it
I
the
did.
day of, which is pretty cool. That's exciting. I think I'm probably going to skip it in the theaters unless you tell me it's amazing and then I might go see it. I'll probably wait for it to come on streaming, but one thing I want to talk about, it's like I'm not mad at them for remaking Strangers, like remake everything. What I'm kind of like, I wouldn't say bothered by, but like an interesting trend that I'm not sure I get is like this new thing to make everything into trilogies. Like they did it with Halloween, where they're like, okay, we're gonna make a new trilogy of films. They're trying to do it Exorcist. Strangers is going to be a trilogy. The new 28 Days Later is going to be a trilogy. And to me, just make one good movie, and then if it's good, then make more. Like if you're already going into it saying like, well, there's going to be two more, like that gives them like flexibility for this movie to suck. 'Cause it's like, well, it's building towards something. It doesn't need to be great. Like I don't need to make a good movie. Make one movie. I'm assuming it has something to do with how these things get greenlit and how they get the investing and stuff like that. But as a fan, like I know maybe some people are excited, like, oh, there's a new trilogy, but I could care less. Like it just makes me think that they're not going to be good. Or I can just wait till all three are out and then I'll just watch them all back to back. I don't need to watch them now. I don't know how you feel about that. Do you care?
So the rumor for this movie is when they were writing it, the guy just like totally got like sucked into this world, and he ended up writing a 280-page script. He tried to like pare it down a bit, and then he was like, no, this is impossible, and it ended up being like 4.5 hours long. So I think what they tried to do is like they wanted to release this full story, so to make it accessible they cut it into 3 movies. So it's basically just going to be, one is going to be a continuation of the next, and they're just going to, I guess, stop it at a good point, and then the next one's going to pick right up from there. So I mean, that's the marketing they're putting out. I don't
Yeah.
know if, you could be right where it's like, well, you have to make 3 and there's like, it's a part of the deal. But what they're saying there is that the script was just so encompassing, and they didn't want to like leave out any part of this amazing story that they had to make. I don't know. I don't know if I believe it. Marketing is big,
Yeah, I
so
mean, is it really like, I mean, think about it. Strangers, 450-page, brilliant script. I mean, maybe it is, maybe it's life-changing, but I mean,
I don't know.
it's a simple story, right? You would think. And this one, I don't know much about the chapter 1. It does look, at least what I've seen, looks exactly like the original, or at least follows the same plot. So I don't know how you kind of.
Yeah, so from what I think is they're going to just try to like dive into like the backstory of the strangers, which I think could either be good or it could shoot them in the foot and ruin this entire, series if they don't do this right. Because if this backstory doesn't live up to the expectations that we've had for over 10 years now, I mean 15 years, I don't feel like doing math right now. I drank too much of this Heaven's Door, but whatever, 2008, we know these killers, they're these brutal evil killers that operate with no motive. Will they ruin the franchise by giving you a backstory, taking out that mystery, and giving you a motive, or what they feel is the reason why this happened? And I don't know, it could be brilliant and it could be a great story, but what is my gut feeling is they're probably going to mess it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a chance, right? And I'll go in open-minded, but and we'll get into the films and dive a little bit. But I think for me, the one of the main things that I like about these films is that you know nothing about these killers, and they could be anybody. And the fact that they don't have a motive necessarily that I am aware of makes them that the more scary, that they're just targeting random people for fun. And that to me is like what keeps these interesting. If I know who they are or see them unmasked, like I don't think again, who knows what they're going to do, right? I mean, the movie could be brilliant, it could be amazing, it could be a completely different take on this that I've never thought about before. But to me, like, yeah, I have no interest in learning about them. You know, it's funny. I was looking on when I was doing research for this, I was looking at IMDb, and there was one of the trivia items said that a lot of horror critics think that the three killers and the strangers might be supernatural. And number one, I was like, why are you even thinking that? And number two, that sounds lame. Like, I don't like that. Like, if they're like Jason, like that's not that scary. I like, again, there's three random people that just happen to do this. To me, that's what makes the movie unique and interesting. But
I have a theory, but I don't know if I want to share it or not. It's just something I always thought by just a couple of things that they allude to in the first one, and they kind of like they actually show something kind of similar in the new trailer. And it's like I hope I'm not right, but I do have a theory. I don't know. I guess I'll share it. I hope it's not correct, but I have some sort of feeling that maybe the strangers are some sort of like Mormon dissenters. So they were part of the Mormon church, and they left, and this is who they became. You know, I don't want to knock Mormons or anything like that, but it is a cult like religion that's difficult to leave, and there's a lot of problems, you know, with a lot of their rules and the way that they, you know, treat, you know, women and men and things like that. So there are reasons for people to try to escape, but you do have that upbringing that is a bit different than I guess everyone else. So I'm hoping that this is not going to go in that direction, but they do have those children in the first one that are walking around passing out pamphlets, and they're from the Mormon church, and they showed similar kids in the new trailer, and it's like a completely different location. So this is like the Pacific Northwest. I think this one takes place, which is not where I thought the original one took place. For me, that felt like more like Southern East Coast, I think, but I could be wrong. I don't think I know.
you know, I was reading, I think on IMDb, and I'll check this. I think the license plate is like a North Dakota license plate or something like that.
North Dakota. Oh, so I mean,
Let me
oh,
just
see,
double check that while we're
that's
talking.
concerning. See, that's concerning to me because I feel like that is almost like Mormon territory. And yeah, this is tough. So I hope this is not the backstory, and I hope I'm completely wrong about this, but I find it very strange that they would take something so like small from the first film and kind of show it again. Like if I was going to remake a film, I probably wouldn't keep that in, you know. It's just strange. I don't think it's shot for shot. I think it is going to be a somewhat different story, but I think what they chose to show is similar to the original. It's tough. It's hard to know. They only released one trailer, but I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, and if I'm right, then sorry for the spoiler. Because I just drank bourbon and made that up. So it's like like I don't know.
Oh, you know, okay, it says the original Strangers takes place in rural South Carolina.
All right, so the southern East Coast. So that's exactly I felt like it was Virginia personally. It just had that look to me. All right, yeah, so it's both those locations are tough to me for my theory, and I feel like I could be right.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like, and why they even chose Mormon kids in the original Strangers. I never really thought about it. I just thought it was like, oh, this is just interesting. And like, again, not talking about any religion negatively. I have known people that have left the Mormon church, and they were definitely experienced some trauma and were not the same. And they did act out a lot, got very into drugs and all kinds of crazy stuff because they finally had the chance to be free, I guess, and went a little far.
That's my thinking. That's exactly my thinking. I know a few people as well, so I guess we'll see. But thinking about and changing from that topic just a little bit, and just kind of going into their backstory. The one thing, as you know, I'm a huge home invasion film nut. I'm a freak. I love them. The one thing that ruins every single home invasion film is when the killer takes off his mask, or the killer is revealed, or anything that kind of breaks like that mystery about the killer. It's not scary. It's suddenly they just turn into like a normal person, and it's like, all right, this is nothing. It's not scary anymore. If they're going to do that in this film series, it's going to be hard to come back from that and just have them put on a mask and be like these terrifying individuals that are just so evil. I mean, you know who they are now. They have a personality. Now they have a face. Now you have an opinion about them. But like, no, and they're really good looking too in real life. So I don't know what they're going to. I don't know what they're going to do to the actual real life actors. Are they going to try to like play them down? Or are they going to look natural? And it's like, you may like them because of the way they look or the way they act, and now they just become people, and that to me would take away a lot from like the fear and the tension of these films if it's just like they're normal people, they work at like a McDonald's, and then every now and then they put on a mask and they want to act out. So I hope I hope a lot of these things don't come up in the new films.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll see. I'll go in open-minded, and I'm going to try not to read anything about them until I watch them, which will be difficult, right? Because I'm probably going to wait to watch them. But yeah. So anyway, so before we kind of get into it, actually, like, yeah, I'm a huge fan of home invasion movies too. So what would you say? And this is gonna be tough to pick your top three home invasion movies, not including either of the Strangers movies.
Okay, so definitely Ills, which is them in French. That is definitely one of my favorites.
So one thing about that movie too, and I love that movie too, and I haven't seen it in a minute because I've been trying to track it down. That movie is also based on a true story. It's a very similar plot. I read, and I don't know how true this is, that Strangers, I always thought was a remake of Ills. But according to the director, at least of what I read, it is not. And it is actually loosely based on two things. One thing that happened to him when he was a kid, where late at night someone came to the door looking for somebody, like that infamous scene in The Strangers where she goes, "Is Tamara home?" And turns out that night a group of people robbed every house in the neighborhood. And it's also, according to them, loosely based on an unsolved 1981 quadruple homicide that occurred in Northern California, known as the Keddie murder, the Keddie resort murders, where four people were found tied up, brutally murdered, and no one knows why. So those are the two things that it might have been based on. I also feel like it's very similar to Funny Games as well.
Oh yeah.
So there's a lot of different influences, but yeah, I always thought this was a direct kind of, although it's a very different film, right? Because the killers in Ills are completely different.
Maybe they're inspired by it, but I mean, I think Ills is a great film,
I agree.
And to remake that, and if your vision was The Strangers, I think you did a great job. Because I think it captures a lot of what Ills captures, which is tension building with just explosive moments, and I think both films kind of do that.
So would you say your other two top three?
I would say You're Next is another favorite. It's really hard for me to pick because you guys could ask Rich. There are weeks and months where all I do is watch home invasion movies and try to seek them out, try to find them. I always try to find a new one. Even if it sucks, I try to find really anything that falls in that. But definitely You're Next. I love that. I love when it came out. It had just a great feel to it. I remember the marketing was so nostalgic. Like they used to have commercials for it, and you really didn't know what it was about, but you kind of knew it was going to be a home invasion movie. So I remember being very excited to go see that in a theater, and I think I went 3 or 4 times. That's how much I liked it. So it was fantastic. And I would say, and this is tough to like pick my third. It's a toss up between a lot, but I'm gonna go with The Collector.
Oh,
Just
interesting.
because, yeah, just because it was so different.
I forgot that one.
Yeah, it's different. I liked it's home invasion, but it was like a reverse kind of home invasion where the killer kind of gets there first and sets up a bunch of traps to kind of set up anyone that walks into the house. So it's still like a home invasion, but just a little twist on it. And I like the twist. I think it's a brutal movie, and watching like, the cat and mouse kind of play between the killer and I guess the star of the movie was kind of interesting, and I think it looked great as well. And so I'm gonna go with that. So that's my 3. What are your 3?
Yeah, no, I love The Collector. So my 3, You're Next definitely is like the first one that comes to mind, right? Another one that, The Purge,
Oh,
I think is another one, which I rewatched.
that was tough. I
Yeah.
was back and forth with that. Yeah.
I rewatched the other one, and then I am torn between Don't Breathe And well,
See?
actually, no, I'm not torn, but like I was torn between Don't Breathe and The Purge. So I question. So does a movie, if it's a home invasion, does the whole thing need to take place in the house? So the first one that comes to mind for me as my favorite is High Tension, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I would say
That's a
the
home
first
invasion
45
film.
minutes are in the house.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
that's my top. I
yeah.
love that movie. I've watched the movie 100 times. I love it more every time I watch it. It's one of my favorite films. So yeah, I would say High Tension, you're next, and then either The Purge or Don't Breathe would be my top three. But again, there's so many, right? I forgot about the
Those are
collector.
great
Like,
choices.
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I'm sure there's a ton that I'm like, if you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. What about that one? Or what about that one? So yeah, it's tough because there's so many good films in that genre. And that genre just resonates because look, we all live in places. And I know for me, one of my biggest fears is a home invasion, and I'm prepared for it and ready to go. But it's something I think about and dream about all the time.
It's scary, and I think that's really where it does resonate, because it hits home literally. It's where you live. It's the one place that you're supposed to feel safe. If you're trekking around the woods and getting trashed and not paying attention to what you're doing, yeah, you could see why the door opens up for something bad to happen. But when you're minding your business, sitting in your home with the doors locked, you expect everything to be okay. And I think that's the nerve that the home invasion genre really taps on, because it's almost like no matter what you do, there's a small percentage chance that this could happen to you. To me, that's scary, and it's scarier than a lot of, like, supernatural things.
Yeah, out of all the genres of horror movies, home invasion is the one that's the most likely to happen to you, I would think. If not the most, definitely the top three most likely things that could potentially happen. All right, cool. So let's get into The Strangers. We talked a lot about a bunch of different things. Let's talk about it. So what's the plot for those of you who haven't seen it? And just before we kind of get into it, for those of you new to the podcast, we do tend to spoil shit. So if you haven't seen these movies, like pause it, watch them, then come back. So Strangers, what's it about?
All right, the original Strangers, so 2008. All
Bring us
right.
back.
A troubled couple, James Hoyt and Kristen McKay, who's played by a very big cast, Scott Speedman and Liv Tyler. They leave a wedding reception to spend a night in an isolated vacation home somewhere in the country. Uh, there's a knock at the door, and they have a creepy encounter with a young woman at the door. And right after that, they basically begin to be terrorized by a group of three strangers, and they must fight to survive the night. And there's a lot in there. I just gave like the high level, and there's so much to talk about just from those two sentences that I gave.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this movie is I've seen this a lot of times, and I think every time I see it, I come away with something different that I didn't consider before. And I think a lot of that is because they leave a lot of things to your imagination, or just things aren't really blatantly called out for you. Like one thing, for example, and every time I watch this movie, I am like annoyed or pissed off at some of the decisions they make. And I'm like, why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? And a lot of it is, okay, maybe they're just dumb. That's possible. But I also just realized they're trashed, and it's like 4 in the morning and they haven't slept. So I can't expect them to make right, correct decisions. I mean, it starts off they get home, when they get to the house, they're drunk, and then they continue drinking. So, I can't expect them to be rational or to, make good choices. And I think I always kind of held that against this movie. Like, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? But it makes sense. Like I get a few in me, and I like to think I think clearer, but I think better when I'm not sober, but maybe that's not true.
So I think that's definitely a layer, but the one thing that really sticks out to me in like the first 15 minutes of this film is, I mean, even though he's driving, they're supposed to been drinking at this wedding. They have hit a difficult patch because there was some sort of like failed marriage proposal at the wedding. And when they get to the house, it's not just the drunkenness. They get there, and like the house is all decorated for a celebration, and there's champagne and all this stuff. There's like this extreme awkwardness between the two of them, and you could feel tension between the two of them because they're not quite sure where they are in the relationship. And you could tell that they really love each other. I think they did a good job at developing that. So they're going through that, trying to figure that out. They're definitely drinking some more champagne. And then all of a sudden we introduce this new level of like something for them to deal with, and a new tension and a new stress all on top of that. And I think they're not making clear decisions based on really what they're going through, because they're so conflicted to begin with, and their minds are so stuck on, like, what's going on between them, that all of a sudden now you throw in a random stranger at 4 a.m. and then some weird things begin to happen. And his first reaction really is to ignore them. He's kind of just like blaming her. And I think he's just being like a dick because he wants to like punish her. I really feel like he's trying to punish her for not accepting his proposal. So he's almost like gaslighting her, making like that she's like seeing things and hearing things when clearly these things are happening. And the strangest thing, and I'm gonna stop right after this, is that this dude's looking for like any excuse to get the hell out of that house, and he decides to go get cigarettes at like what time in the morning? It looks like a
4:05.
20-minute drive.
More
Yeah.
than right. I feel like it's more than that.
The
They're in the
guy's
middle of
getting
nowhere.
like, so he just leaves her alone, even though this weird thing just happened.
Yeah, and that always bothered me because I was like, it's 4:05 in the morning. A weird woman just came to the door, and then he goes out to get cigarettes, which I thought, again, there's no place close by. They're in the middle of nowhere. What could possibly be open in North Carolina at 4 in the morning? Like, I don't know if there's 7-Elevens on every corner there. But and I was like, why is he leaving? But you're right. He was just looking for any excuse to get out of this house and get away from her and just clear his head, because he's being around her is reminding him of his own failure. That didn't click for me until I think this watch, because I always bother me. I'm like, this guy's an idiot. Like, why would you ever leave? Yeah, he's looking for any reason just to leave, and that makes sense. And the other piece about gaslighting, yeah, that was another thing I thought was weird, because when he finally does come home from his cigarette journey, and she's freaking out like there was someone in the house, like all this shit happened, and he's totally like not even that upset about it. He's like, what are you talking about? It's fine. Which to me, again, I come home and a woman is telling me this, I am, but also she also like didn't also appear that freaked out either. So like it was odd, like how like her reaction, and it might have just been maybe he was like super controlling towards her, and like as soon as he said like it's nothing, like she's like, oh yeah, maybe it's in my head, like, I don't really know, because we don't know a lot about these two people. We're picked up right in the middle of this, and you said like you get that they love each other. I'm not even sure they love each other anymore, or did, or I can't really tell what their relationship is. It might have been a terrible relationship for all we know, and they could have like he could have treated her like shit, and that's why she didn't. We don't really know.
we don't
Um,
we don't know why she turns down the proposal, but the fact that she tries to kind of like smooth it over with sex, I feel like there's still something there. And the reason why I think she's not really reacting, because I mean
Drunk.
I mean, she's drunk, and it could be a part of his personality where she believes like what he says. Like if he's like, no, no, this is my parents' house, it's just noises, it's just stuff like that. That would never happen here. Maybe she doesn't want to like overreact and be like, oh, all right, I get that. He probably knows because he has, been here before or something like that. But I think that is also a huge element of all home invasion movies. It's a trope, and the trope is you ignore all the red flags until they become so obvious you can't ignore them anymore. And usually by that point, it's too late, and you're already in the middle of it trying to deal with it. And I think a ton of home invasion films work off of that premise, where you're just like, this can't be happening. This is not happening to me. This don't happen in this neighborhood, things like that. And it takes forever for people to get on board and be like, oh shit, something's happening.
Yeah, that's why me in my personal life, whenever the littlest thing happens, it's out of the ordinary, I immediately go into lockdown mode, because I've seen enough of these movies where people ignore those signs until it's too late. Like you said, the people are already in the house at this point, and you just should have, like, that noise you heard, what, like, you should just investigated it, right? Yeah, it's a couple things you said. Like one thing is, and it really is an interesting portrayal of a relationship, and you could dissect it, and I'm sure we can keep going on it. But yeah, when you say like she sleeps with him kind of because she still cares for him, I got like a different take on that. I kind of got that she was sleeping with him just because she like felt sorry for him, or just to kind of shut him up. Because what's interesting is like they attempt to have sex, which seemed like passionless sex. Like I think she was just like, fine, like whatever, you can fuck me, and that'll like get us through this night, and maybe we go to sleep after this. But then someone comes to the doorway, and there's that weird scene. But immediately after that, they're like now sitting super far apart. Like, wouldn't you be like they were about to like make love, and they got interrupted, and now it's like they're right back where they were, which again, drunk, so like anything could happen. But you also think that like you like they were kind of making quote unquote making up, and now all of a sudden they're not, and now he's got to go leave and get his cigarettes, which again I thought was just a weird kind of take. So I kind of felt like that was one of those things where she's like, I guess I'll do this. Yeah, we don't know why the proposal goes wrong. One thing that did bother me, just one thing that drives me insane in real life, is when someone proposes at someone else's wedding. I hate that.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel
like
I feel
it's not
like
your wedding,
no,
dude.
you're taking away the spotlight. Like it's like
Yeah, that's what I'm
it's their
saying. Yeah.
day, and now you're gonna be this asshole. Like you couldn't wait till you got to the cabin to do it. Like you had this plan afterwards. You had the whole thing romantic. Like why not do it there? And again, maybe drunk, you just kind of rushed into it. But I hate that. Like if I was the person getting married, I'd be like, ugh, you like it had to be about you.
Not inviting James and Kristen again. Fuck that.
Okay, so we talked enough about their relationship and the problems they're having. Let's talk about the killers really quick. So the killers in this, it's one male, two females. All three are masked. I'm trying to think of another movie that had three killers like this because I can't really think of one. And all are very, again, you don't know anything about them. There's no backstory other than they just want to fuck with these people for some reason. And to me, the masks they had were pretty terrifying. They have three very different masks, so I thought was also interesting. Three very different personalities of the killers that you kind of get without even really knowing anything about them.
That man in the mask. I mean that's a pretty terrifying burlap sack, but it's very effective. I find the pinup girl very attractive, so I'm not even quite sure if I was in the situation if I would be terrified because I'm like, that's kind of a cool mask. What's happening here?
Like I'm single now. I just I just broke up.
And then they got the doll face, who clearly seems like the youngest one, the newbie of the group. So it's hard to tell the dynamic, but for some reason she just feels like she's the new addition or the youngest at the bare minimum. But yeah, I mean, they are terrifying and they seem pretty well organized. They definitely have a plan throughout the night, all the various little things that happen. It seemed well coordinated to kind of like create stress and confusion and really get, James and Kristen to make some of these terrible decisions. I think, just the way that they would do a few little things and then do one big thing, and that would just cause like chaos. I think I think that was really effective. So it's hard to tell how many times these killers have done this before.
I think it's the first time because they do say something in the very end. I think they say something like next time will be better or easier. So I get the feeling this is the first time they did this. You don't know that right early on. I don't think you figure that out. It's like the last 30 seconds of the movie, but I do get the feeling this is the first time they ever did this, which again, really organized for the first time. Like that's one interesting thing too about this movie. And it's actually something I kind of didn't like is in a lot of these kind of home invasion movies, and you definitely see it in the sequel, there's a lot of like back and forth, right? Where, the people are fighting with the killers. Maybe the killers get fucked up a little bit. Maybe some other shit happens. In this, the killers really ever really get hurt or injured or like really set back in any way. Like really, they're just hunting these two people the entire movie, which again is interesting, but I kind of felt that towards the end, it starts getting a little repetitive. And also the couple doesn't really get that hurt either up until the very end. So it's kind of like they're just kind of chasing these people around in kind of a game of like hide and seek, which again is interesting. But to me, I did get kind of I do start getting kind of bored towards the end. And this is one of those movies, we talk about this all the time, where it's a good movie. I like the movie, but I don't always finish it. I turn it off at a certain point because and it's a short movie too. I think without credits, it's probably like an hour and 15 minutes. And there's probably 10 minutes of just like nothing happening, like in the beginning and end, where it's just, set up. So it's really not even a long movie, but it does kind of feel, again, it starts to get boring for me at a certain point. And I think it's because there's no back and forth. Again, it's not like they catch them and then they get away because they like kick them in the face, or like a lot of stuff doesn't really happen. At least
it's a lot of toying with their victims, and I think they're doing that on purpose because I feel like they don't want Dollface to get injured in any way, because I feel like maybe it's her first one, but I feel like they've done this before. I just feel like it's way way too good. Like how they're doing this, and the things they come up with to do to the couple to cause, you know, a fear and anxiety. So almost like they were coaching her, like, you know, like, all right, we're going to do this, and now they're going to do that. And it was almost like predictable, like how the couple would react. I get what you're saying, that it gets like they go a little bit too far with that. Like once they leave the setting of the home and it spreads out outside and they go into a shed, it's like there's, I mean, I have 100 problems with that, because one, it's like you're in the woods. If you made it outside, just fucking run, man. Just run, and they will never find you, because they're not like professional hunters. They're not going to be able to track footprints and broken sticks. You know, you just keep running, they'll never find you. And I don't even know how dedicated they are to finding them if they did get away.
Yeah, they'll go to another
So
house maybe, right?
yeah, like why didn't they just run? But instead they go to the one obvious spot that you would go, which is the giant shed. I mean, I felt like that it was just a little too annoying, because at one point it felt like they were trapped in the house, and then once they got out of the house, it's like, you did it, you're free,
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, that's for me for sure. Once Liv Tyler gets outside, that's when the movie completely loses me. And at that point, you kind of lose track of where the male, where Scott Speedman is. Like I always forget, like where did he go? Like what's he up to right now? And then in the end, they come back together. But there's like probably a good 10, 15 minutes of the movie where it's just Liv Tyler running around outside or hiding. And to me, I start getting really bored, which is a shame because again, the movie is very high tension. It's very like the stakes are high, but there's something missing, I think, for me in that last act to really kind of keep me engaged, where I'm going to, again, stick with the entire thing towards the end, which I don't always do. One thing I do like about this movie that's super interesting is it takes place in real time, I think, because it starts basically when
Yeah,
the girl comes to the door, it's 4:05 a.m. and it basically stops when sunrise, which would be that 2 hours, hour and a half of the movie. So I like that it actually is like legit real time.
I love that. And like whenever anyone shows like a clock in a film, I always look at it, because I'm always curious like how accurate they are to like what's happening on screen, and if that's an element. And I totally feel like it's an element in this film, where it's trying to show you that this is going on throughout the night. Yeah, I check the clock every time they run past it. I'm like, all right. You
Yeah.
know, I'm like, are they gonna screw it up? Is it suddenly going to be like 11 or something like that? But no, that they did that fairly well. So I think they wanted us to look at that, and I think they wanted us to believe that was in real time. I loved it. And I mean, I'm gonna back it up a little bit to like when we first see the man in the mask. James leaves to get those cigarettes, and now Kristen is basically sitting in the house by herself, hearing these strange noises. And I don't know if this annoys you. It definitely annoys some people. I hear about it sometimes, but all of a sudden, like when we kind of get like that creepiness of like the fade in, and then we see like the killer is already in the house, and she doesn't know it, but we know it. I always like that. I always
I
like
love that
knowing
scene.
something. Oh, you
Yeah.
like that? Okay. I
Yeah.
always like it when like when the audience knows something that like the actor doesn't know. And I'm like, you know what? If there was any question about what was going on, or what the intentions are for the night, we now know. We now know that it's these people. They could get in and out of the house whenever they want, and she has no clue about this. So whatever happens, it's going to be difficult for her to kind of like, you know, turn this around from here, because they're the ones in control. Definitely not the couple, even though they assume it's their house. They assume they're locking the doors. They assume they're doing everything right, but they have no clue like what's happening around them. And to me, I think when you see that, you get two reactions. You just see like bullshit or oh shit. And I think I'm more of the oh shit, now what, you know, because they were doomed right then.
Yeah, I actually wrote a note on that scene you're talking about in particular, that it is super creepy because she's just sitting there, and I think she does find a cigarette somehow 'cause she's smoking a cigarette all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And you just see basically the man just standing there lurking in the doorway. And it's a long scene. Like he's there for like, it's not like you just see him and he's kind of there for 2 seconds. Like a lot of movies will do that, where again, you see the person creeping and then they're gone. He's just lurking right there while she's just doing mundane shit. And that to me is really scary and I think really effective. I think they did a really good job with that in this movie, that with the first introduction of that killer. I completely agree. One other thing I love too about this movie is the sound design. I think is really good because there's not a lot of music. It's a lot very quiet at times. It's a lot of just weird rumbles and noises. The one thing I will say though, with surround sound, it's tough because you turn it up because you're not hearing a lot, and then all of a sudden it's like boom, boom, boom when they're banging around the house.
Yeah.
Like scared the shit out of me a few times, especially yeah, early on. There's a few scenes where again she's in the house and there's just banging coming from all different places. And yeah, like I'm like super quiet, super locked in. All of a sudden, here, boom, 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 coming right behind me, and it put me on edge. I like it's like, oh shit, I find my remote to like lower it.
I mean, I thought that was super effective, that scene where she actually does see the man in the mask, where
Oh
she kind of walks over to that sliding door because she heard like it sounded like, I guess, scraping
yeah,
or something like that. And she walks up to the door and the curtains are closed. And just as you described, the scene goes silent. It goes dead. You don't hear a thing. And then she opens up the curtain and you see the guy there and he just starts pounding on the glass, and that whole entire scene just erupts with like chaos, with the banging, all sorts of noises happening, glass breaking, the record skipping. I mean, to me that was a very effective sound design, but also a great jump scare, because I think we knew that he was going to be there, but just the way it was done, it was still effective, because like you can't help but just like you just kind of jump a little bit, because they just did so great with just kicking back all the sound and everything else to kind of like really enhance that scene.
yeah. No, I wrote a note that first jump scare scared the shit out of me. It absolutely
Oh,
did,
yeah. So
and
yeah, yeah,
I've
that's
seen this movie a
interesting.
bunch of times, and I was literally like, holy shit. It's funny, like jump scares don't get me that often, but when they do, they really get me. And like talking about that Immaculate movie, there's one jump scare that fucking I actually yelled out loud, ah,
What,
like,
really?
yeah, it's just like I wasn't expecting it. Like I was expecting it to come from a certain place, and then it came from a completely different place, and I was like not expecting it. But as much as like you hate on, or I hate on movies, or real hate on movies that have like a ton of jump scares that are not effective, but when they are effective, it's like makes you like laugh a little bit. You're like, oh, I can't believe that got me. Like I've seen The Strangers 12 times, and like this, I know this is gonna happen, and somehow it still got me. And I think it's like you said exactly. It's because it's silent, and all of a sudden it's like this boom that you didn't expect. And it's funny we're talking about how much we enjoyed the sound design of this movie and how effective it was. When this played theatrically, a note I read was that a lot of theaters were sent faulty reels of the movie that had a ton of sound problems, where several minutes and several scenes are filled with just static. Like you just hear static. And apparently, like people didn't really realize that that was a problem because they felt that, as dark as this movie was, maybe that was intentional. But apparently, a lot of people saw this in theaters in a not the way it was meant to be seen.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. Like, but what do you do? Like, you don't think it's a problem. You think, oh, I guess this was artistic, and somehow the static worked for whatever reason.
Interesting. I don't remember if I saw this in the theater.
I did
I
not. I
don't
definitely
remember.
did not.
I'm gonna say I didn't. Yeah, I'm gonna say I didn't. I saw the next movie we're gonna talk about in the theater, but I didn't see this one.
Yeah, some other notes that I have of this movie, just on like the production. So that wasn't a real house. Actually, that was a set they built, which I thought was
Oh,
interesting.
wow.
I think the shed and all the stuff once they leave the house is an actual location, but the house that they're actually in is not a real house. It's just a set. The other thing is
Great
the
job.
movie, yeah, right? Because it looks very like a
Yeah,
house
look
that
at
you
yeah,
might
great
be in.
job.
Yeah, which is odd, like, right? Also, this film was shot chronologically, which is really bizarre for a movie to do that. It just makes no sense to do it that way, but that's how they did it. I guess it makes kind of sense. Like, if you could shoot chronologically, you want to, because then you get that effect of one thing leading to the next. Logistically, though, it's a nightmare, and probably made this movie more expensive than it needed to be, but that's how they wanted it. And the other thing is that I read is two things. One, the original script, the movie was titled The Faces, which okay, that's okay. I like The Strangers
Not
better, but
terrible.
it's not bad. And the other thing was the film was shot entirely with handheld cameras or steady cams. There's no tripods. It's all movement, which you don't really think about, but I guess
Do I
looking back
believe
at it,
that? Hmm.
that's what the note says. So now I want to rewatch it, because I didn't really pick up on
Really?
that there was a lot of movement,
I
but
felt like there was some steadiness in those operators then.
yeah, apparently that's what the note says, that it's all
Wow.
shot handheld. So who knows? I need to rewatch it and like see that. Like, that's something I thought about.
Yeah, definitely outside it gets very shaky out there. Inside though, I thought there were some nice clean looking shots. So I don't know. I mean, that's amazing though if they did. Hey, good for them. Wow, no tripods, huh?
Yeah, that's what the note says. You know what? What's
Is
interesting
that
too is
marketing though? Is that marketing to make it interesting?
look. Here's the thing too. Like you got to take everything. A lot of the facts that we give, or I give anywhere, from IMDb trivia, which is crowdsourced. So it doesn't. It's not always it's usually true, but there's some things you got to take with a grain of salt. So this is just what I read. Like, is it true? I wasn't there. I don't know. I have no idea. This is just what like someone found that fact somewhere.
Well, I'm going to definitely watch this movie again, probably sometime the next 2 months. So I'm going to keep a lookout. Yeah, I'll definitely keep a lookout for that.
You know, another thing we talk about this all the time too, where people are in like a safe place and they leave that safe place, and that happens in this movie. And I kind of get why it happens, but so they're in the room hiding, the couple, and to spoil it, his Scott Speedman's friend or brother or something like that shows up at the house and is looking for them, and they think he's the killer, and they blow his head off with a shotgun, which is really not something I expected to see. It was like, holy shit. But then they leave that room, and it's clear that that room was a safe place because they did kill somebody. Like, there was a great place to be. If they would have spent the rest of the night, another hour and a half there, they probably would have lived.
I mean, yeah, and don't feel bad for Mike who got killed because he was being stalked anyway by the man in the mask. So one way or another, he was either gonna get shot, he was gonna get shot or axed. So I think it actually worked out better for him that he got shot. It's just sad that his friend or brother, wasn't really, maybe it's his brother,
And it wasn't clear to me. Yeah, I think they
killed.
do say it, but I don't remember. You know what though? Like, when I think about it though, like his car gets fucked up. He sees the axe cuts in the door or whatever, and he doesn't think to call the police. He
He's
just
not a
kind of
red
keeps.
alert. Like,
Yeah, he's
he
just
doesn't
walking
even,
around the house like it's his
doesn't even
fault.
yell, hey,
Yeah,
Kristen, hey,
everybody
like
okay?
where are you guys? Like he's not acting like somebody who just like, I mean, the car was trashed. And he's, and he knows that they were going through like some sort of problem and maybe it escalated. So he's not even yelling for like James or
Yeah,
or
did you
or
kill your girlfriend?
Kristen,
Like, what
not
happened?
thinking,
You know?
yeah, not thinking that there's strangers in the house, but that something else is really wrong, and he's not on red alert. And again, it's that home invasion trope. Everyone ignores all the red flags until it's so blatantly obvious that there's an issue. It's already too late, and that's what happened. So he ignored every single red flag and all the signs, and when he gets shot in the face, it was too late for him to change anything, because if he had just yelled out their names, if he just went back outside and called the cops, he probably would have been fine. But getting back to them in that room, yeah, it's kind of weird. Somehow he screwed it up. They had a shotgun, they had a good tactical advantage. I don't know how they screwed it up, but what I believe, and I thought about this many times because I'm like, that's the dumbest thing they ever did. I don't care who you killed, stay in that room. It's safer. But you know what I think? I think the strangers are so relentless. They would have either got them out of that room somehow or set that house on fire to get them out. There was no way that they were just going to sit in that room until sunrise. I think that's how the strangers were going to act that particular night. They would have found a way to get them out.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think they still should have stayed in that room as long as they could have, but you're right. They would have found a way to get them out somehow, because you're right. They had this planned out. They weren't just gonna like quit now. They come this far. It's probably 5 in the morning at this point, maybe later. They probably want to get home and get to bed. So yeah, they probably would have found a way to get them out of that room. So I don't want to. I'm going to try not to spoil the ending of the movie, but I do want to talk about it, and I would like to know your thoughts on the ending, because I do feel it's somewhat anticlimactic, and this gets into the my think about how the movie just kind of drags in that last act. And they do have there is that one scene where they all finally interact together, and they're kind of talking to each other, although the strangers like only I think only one of them speaks, and it's like one or two lines. It's like not like a good conversation. And the one line she does say, like, because you were home, is classic and effective. But to me, like all the stuff that happened and then that ended that way, just to me was like a letdown. Like, I kind of wanted something bigger and grander. And
I feel you on that, but was it more brutal by ending the way it did and just so cold and so stark and bleak, and just it wasn't over the top bloody, it wasn't over the top gory, it wasn't like some action sequence going on. It was just like slow burn up until this moment. I mean, I thought that kind of helped with the atmosphere and just like how evil the strangers were, that they weren't going to give you that. They weren't going to give you the quick ending. They wanted to, they wanted to do this. And that's kind of the way I took it, I think, is it built up their character a little bit more, because you would think that they would be excited and it's going to hit this culmination, but it didn't. It was just, it matched kind of everything else they did. I don't know. That's kind of the way I took it.
I mean, I don't hate the ending, and I see what you're saying, and I could kind of, that makes me appreciate it a little more. I think I am a little disappointed, and I think especially because the very beginning of the movie, they basically show you the aftermath of what happened. So you kind of, it's not like blatant in your face, but you kind of get the feeling that like they died, like or something bad happened. Maybe they didn't die,
Something
but,
really
like,
bad happened.
something really bad happened, and so you kind of know that this isn't going to end well from the beginning. And again, maybe it's they killed the strangers and get away, or they just bleed and get away. Like, you don't really know exactly what happens, but to me, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, I already knew this was going to happen, and I feel like it just needed a little more. I don't know. It needed a little more something for me, and I think especially after just it dragging a bit with her running around outside, and then okay, now we're here, and they dragged it on a bit, and then and after that it doesn't even end yet, because then you have like the kids coming up, and I don't know. I just felt like I didn't feel like they really weren't sure how to end it, and it didn't seem like this was the ending. They just kind of like thought of an ending. I don't know.
It felt ominous to me, and I think maybe that was what they were trying to capture. I mean, they do skip a lot from when they eventually catch them and they have that little interaction, because from what I could see, like, changed their clothes. So like Kristen was back in her dress when the whole night she was running around in a flannel and jeans. So I don't know if they like dressed them back up, propped them up to kind of just make it more fucked up,
I never
or
thought of that. I like that idea. I didn't even catch that, but yeah, that's a good idea.
that's why it was kind of slow, and they just like dragged it out to keep keep terrorizing them more, because they're just so evil. They're not letting you off the hook. At the end of the movie, when you see the strangers leaving and they're driving off in their truck, and they run into like those Mormon kids, they're wearing different clothes as well. So at some point they changed as well.
I didn't
So
notice that.
there's a lot that they skipped. And again, I don't know if they changed their clothes because there was blood on the clothes. Like, I have no idea. Or it could be what are those eras called when they
Continuity era.
continuity.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's like continuity eras.
No, they
I
probably
don't
it
think
was probably
so.
intentional, because they were wearing one
I think
outfit
it's
the entire
intentional.
movie. Yeah, I'm sure it's intentional. I just don't think, maybe I did pick up on it. Again, this is probably the 12th time I've seen this movie, and I forget it. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think, again, for me, this is another reason why I like this movie a lot. I think it is a good movie. I do usually shut it off at like the 45-minute mark. Again, I already know how it ends. It's like the ending isn't that entertaining to me. I don't need to see it. But there are parts of the movie that I do love. So am I going to watch this movie again? Hell yeah, I'm going to watch it again. And I'm probably going to watch it many times over the rest of my life. I am going to give it probably a lower rating than you. I'm going to give it 3 bloody knives, number 1, 2, 3. And that's because of that. It's because I like the movie, but I usually don't watch the whole thing. And there are definitely things about it that are questionable for me. So yeah, 3 bloody knives for me. Again, I recommend watching it, but it's not one of my favorite movies. So what about you? What do you give it? We could drink together.
Oh, we could drink together. Yeah. And I just refilled here. So, I mean, I love this movie. And if I could have chose it for one of my top 3 when we were discussing it before, I probably would have picked it as like a number 1 or number 2 movie for me. I do have a poster of pinup girl in my office.
Oh, cool.
It's framed. It's very nice. It's right in front of my desk. So I really do like this film a lot. I'm gonna get 4.5.
Wow. You really like this movie. It's funny. I just remembered, one of the last times we hung out in person together was at your house, and I believe it was 4 a.m, and I think we did watch this movie.
Yes,
we I think we started it at the same time. I think, and like watched it till dawn.
I have a picture of us, and we're by like a digital clock, and we took a picture, and I think we drank like 12 bourbons that night.
It was that night. Oh shit!
Yeah,
okay.
and we
yes,
did.
I remember that night.
We did start watching horror movies fairly late, just like the old times. If you caught our last or second to last podcast, we did talk about how this all got started when we used to watch these films really, really late at night. And we did it that night. So yeah, this was definitely one of them. This is always on deck in my house. So if anyone comes to my house, just be prepared to watch this.
I think we watched 3 home invasion movies. I feel like we watched The Purge, Mischief Knife, and then this, I believe,
You're
was the
100%
theme.
right.
Holy
So
shit, I don't know how I remember
so
that.
I
12
don't know how
bourbons
you
and I remember.
remembered that, but knowing me, I would say that's 100% true because I just said like an hour ago that there are weeks and months where all I do is watch home invasion films. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. I was probably in that zone at the time you were here.
Yeah, and Mischief Knife is that Mischief Night is something worth checking out. So okay, I have to drink for 4.5 seconds. You get a drink for 3. That will probably finish this glass, and I will pour another. So cheers.
Uh-huh. Oh. Oh my God, this is so. Oh my God, I can't do it. I'm
Woo!
going back. I have to go back in because I couldn't
Oh,
do it.
damn. So this fistful of bourbon is not terrible, but it's not something I would normally drink. Although now that the ice is melted and it's a lot more watered down, it's a lot more tolerable for
I
me.
don't have any ice, and I just basically drank that neat, and it was disgusting.
All right, so that's The Strangers. We're going to talk about the sequel now, The Strangers Pray at Night. And I'm going to say something that maybe will shock you and maybe different than how you feel, but I personally like this one better. And I think why I like this one better, it's a very different movie than the first one. However, it does have some of the elements that are missing from the first one. I think again, there's a lot more conflict between the victims and the strangers. There's 8 kills in this one, whereas the first one has a lot less than that. So there's a lot more action, I think, in this one that keeps it a little more interesting for me. Again, it's still got some things that's flawed about it, where I think it could be. I would have liked to see certain things that are different, but this one to me is more entertaining and surprisingly, like you would think that like I wouldn't like this movie, but I first time I saw it I didn't think I was going to like it, and I remember being like, oh, that was actually really good, and now the more I watch it the more I like it. So I will tell the plot of this one, and it basically follows this family of 4, a husband, wife, and son and daughter, who I believe are like 17, 18 years old or something like that, and they're going to take their youngest daughter off to college. They decide to stop at this trailer park that I think an uncle or someone owns, and it's empty though because it's winter, and they're going to stay in one of the cabins, or sorry, they're going to stay in one of the trailers. Unfortunately, the strangers have decided that this is their next playground and stalk them, and that's the plot.
Yeah, I mean that's a great place to start, and I mean I do like this movie. The first thing that annoys me though is why they're going to this horrible trailer park. It's like it doesn't look like a place anyone would visit, and I don't care if your aunt and uncle run it. Like, why are you going there? The trailers look terrible. The place looks terrible. It just does not look like a good place to go to. So I get annoyed right off the bat because I'm like, they're making such a big deal about stopping off here. It's like, I would just make an excuse and avoid this whole situation because I'm not going to that trailer park.
But it doesn't have a pool.
Yeah, it did have that. It did have a pool, but outside of that, it was kind of ghetto, dude. I'm gonna
Oh
be
yeah,
honest with you. It
no,
was
it was, and I guess I never really thought too hard about it because number one, we don't know where she's going off to college. Maybe she's going off to college in the middle of nowhere, and this just happens to be like right there. They also could be broke for all we know and take the free room. But I agree. Like I first of all, like I've personally actually never been in a trailer. I'm sure you have.
yeah, I used to date those girls, but anyway,
Uh,
that's a story for a different time.
2 more
So,
bourbons and we'll talk about that.
so
But yeah, it seems like, and being a teenager, like being with my parents in this trailer. I mean, they first of all, the teenagers, they hate the parents, right? They're just not wanting to be. I don't know if they hate their parents, but they do
One's
not want to
super
be there.
rebellious for
Yeah,
sure.
they don't want to
Yeah.
be there. This is another one where, again, there are scenes of them hiding in various trailers from the strangers that are creepy. The scenes of them kind of running around outside are also kind of creepy, just because you get the feeling that like it's a wide open space
Yeah.
and there's nobody around, like no one's gonna help you. And I do like that. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like this movie is really effective. I think it's scary in the right times. I think it is fast paced enough for me. I'm not in love with the characters. Like I could do. I don't think I think the teenage son annoys me the most. He's kind of like that very, I guess, liberal. Like even when he has a gun on this person that basically killed his parents, is like scared to shoot her because he's like, oh, I can't kill somebody. And even like his dad gets the gun. He's like, you're gonna shoot them? It's like, motherfucker, like of course he's gonna shoot them. Don't be a pussy.
He,
you
he
know?
he is a bit of an annoying character. So that's Luke, the son, who's supposed to be a little jockey, and it's actually Lewis Pullman, which is Bill Pullman's son, which I was kind of surprised to see that. But yeah, I'm with you with this movie. It's super fast paced. Like honestly, they get to the trailer. There's no chill at all, man. There's a bang at the door, and right away we hear that iconic line, man. It's Tamara home. The fact that they brought that back from the first film, it still was creepy. And as soon as you heard it, uh-oh, these people are in trouble now. They weren't even in that house for 5 minutes when like some sort of trouble started for them. And I thought that really ramped up the pace. And I think where the first film really kind of excelled in more like that character development, this particular one excelled more in that tension building because it was there's very little character development. We really don't know much about any of these characters. We could tell there's some sort of strange relationship between the parents and the girl. I think her name is Kinsey.
Yeah, so they could be any family. You're right. There's not a lot of character development. And I think that's probably by design, right? Like you don't really need to care about these people that much. Like it's because now you're at the point where you're kind of almost rooting for the strangers because now that you've been exposed to them, again, different kind of movie. I think even the way this one opens is for me more effective than the first one because the first Strangers opens with again the Mormon kid showing up at the house and you just see the aftermath and there's blood and weapons and stuff like that. This one, the opening scene is like creepy where like, the strangers are stalking like a different group of people and there's a scene the girl, I believe it's Dollface, I forget which one, crawls into the bed with this woman and it's so fucking creepy. The beginning, sorry, reminded me a bit of the beginning of like You're Next. Different, very different, but kind of like just setting you up like this is like how everything starts. And I don't know which movie came first. Your Next might have came first. But very similar to that, which I liked how this really starts you right in the middle of it. Then you're introduced to these characters, and then, like you said, 5 minutes later, we're kind of right into the action of it, which I love.
I love the opening scene. Really nostalgic with the 80s music kind of blasting. They're terrorizing this other couple. The dude is just chilling in the pickup listening to music, you know. I mean, that's the point where they're at, that they're just like chilling, and that's how they feel about like what they're doing. They don't even care, you know. They're just like, yeah, someone's probably getting killed in there, but I'm just gonna listen to like my favorite song in here. I thought it was cool though. Great opening scene, 80s nostalgic. Even the fonts look kind of 80s to me, so you kind of knew what you were going to get with this film. It was definitely a little bit more of a throwback than say the first film. This one seemed very 80s, early 90s influence with just like all the music. And we learned a little bit more about the musical tastes of the strangers because really the music we hear is the music that they're playing. So I thought that was really interesting. And if anything, I feel like the strangers take it to a whole nother level of terrorizing and brutality in this film. I think the things that they do, I think the scares are bigger. I think the kills are bigger. I think they're more evil in this one, if possible. They somehow did it.
Yeah, and I wrote a note on the music, and I just want to talk about that really quick. So they kind of introduce music a little bit in the first one. Again, it's very little music other than what they play on the record player. And the one stranger, the male, does play a record at one point, which is really interesting. And yeah, a lot of this movie is him playing music. There's two scenes in particular that really stick out. One is there's a scene where the man gets the killer, the stranger, gets in the car with this guy who's completely like impaled and all fucked up and can't move, and he just sits down, puts on the music and just vibes. Like meanwhile, this guy is like bleeding to death, terrified, and this guy's just chilling, listening to music, which is so creepy and scary. And then the other scene that I think is honestly one of like my favorite scenes in a horror movie, the pool scene, and how they use Total Eclipse of the Heart playing in the background is so effective. And it's so interesting a choice when you have like an iconic song and there's something going on, like a violent scene, like something like Scorsese might do, and they have this whole scene fighting out this whole big kind of fight conflict scene, and you have this one song playing, and there's times where the male stranger and the son end up in the pool, and every time they go underwater the sound starts getting muffled, and then they come out of the water and you hear it again. It was such a great scene. I love that scene.
To
And
me,
it
that was the entire film. That scene was beautifully shot, and me, I'm a sucker for those saturations and those neon lights and all that stuff. The slow kind of bleed out, turning like that water red. It was so effective. I mean, and that's definitely adding to like my feelings towards this movie, because I really did like that scene. And same exact thing, I liked the other scene you're talking about where the dad is killed. He's like impaled by the pipe, and the man in the mask just hops in his car. Instead of just killing him or doing anything, talk to him, nothing, he just turns on the radio.
just
And
chills.
I mean, what an evil guy this man is. That not only is this dude impaled, stuck in his car, he's also thinking about his family. He also knows he's going to die, and now he's seeing the killer and sitting next to him. So he knows, I mean, shit's about to go down. And then he takes out what is probably the world's smallest knife
No, ice
and just
pick. It's an
kills
ice
him slow.
pick.
Oh, it was an ice pick.
It's an
It
ice
was so
pick.
small. And I'm like, you're not going to kill him with that, are you? Oh, but he does. And it's just, I mean, for me, just those two scenes alone really elevated like how evil and terrible that the strangers have become since the last movie. I don't know what's been going on in between, but they definitely, the brutality, they're mad. So
Yeah, and it's honestly like one of the few movies I've seen where a killer does use an ice pick, which I know you and I always thought that was a really cool weapon.
ice pick is
Uh,
very cool.
yeah, and you don't
Should be
see that a
more.
lot. Yeah, I think if you were to like make a list of the top 100 scenes in any horror movie, I would say the pool scene ends up on that list. I say the car scene possibly does too. And I'm talking about every movie that's ever been made, like just iconic scenes. It just really well done, and it doesn't again when you're watching like The Strangers, like it's not what you expect to see. Like especially after the first one, like it did not have those. I don't want to say it's not comedic moments, but I don't know. It sets it apart from other types of movies. It's a really original kind of moment that again you don't expect in a film like this.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that they were brutal, but we just didn't know they had a personality. And like, I don't know how to describe it either. That they just
They're
they
having fun.
want to, yeah, they want to see their victims suffer, and they enjoy it. So it is kind of like fun, a little bit of a cat and mouse, but just on a brutal level. I will take it back a little bit to like the beginning where Cindy, who was the mother,
Christina Hendrickson, right? Christina Hendricks. Christina Hendricks.
Hendrix,
Yeah.
who I love. That's from Mad Men fame right there, and I always loved her in that show. By far the biggest star in this film. I don't even think she makes it 20 minutes in.
Yeah, no, she makes it to, I actually looked it up. She makes it a minute 35, but she is barely in the movie. And I think it's probably because that's all they could afford, right? It's probably like she's a big name, and they probably got her for like 4 days or whatever it is. And then they had to shoot her scenes out. But
To me, it was shocking though
it's
that
absolutely shocking
they
that she gets
killed the
it.
mother off, they killed the biggest star off, and they did it in such a brutal way. Like, who's safe?
Yeah, I did not expect that either, that she would catch it so fast. And it is funny the scene where she does get killed though, because I like on her rewatch when you're actually really paying attention, it's like the killer creeps behind her and is like stabbing her, and she's not even fighting. She's just kind of like not even resisting, like just kind of like, oh.
I thought of that, and here's the thing: her daughter is 5 feet away, watching her. I think all she is focused on is making sure her daughter gets away, because I did find that a bit humorous. I'm like, that is so stupid. Who would do that? I think she sacrificed herself so her daughter, and she was more focused on making sure her daughter left than anything at all that was happening to her. I think she knew that she was going to get killed. What's the point in fighting? But as long as her daughter got away, it was worth it. And that's the way I took it. It was the first time I saw it, I thought it was humorous. I'm like, what is this? Just turn around.
Or throw an elbow or something.
Something, yeah, something. But then last week when I watched it, I remembered it was coming up because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like Christina Hendricks is going to die really, really soon. And I'm like who's safe in this stranger's world? And I'm like, oh wait a minute, she doesn't even fight or anything. And I'm like, let me pay attention. And I really think that was like the point of that particular scene, because the daughter is not even 3-4 feet away looking down from the skylight. And if the daughter didn't bolt right then and there, she would have been next for sure. So I think she just said, hey, let me kill time and let them kill me and let my daughter get away. So I hope that was the intention and it wasn't like some lazy acting.
I hope so too. And you wouldn't think she's a well-known actress and can act, so that probably was it. It does come off as silly, but I could get that. That makes sense to me. One interesting thing I read is the actress that played Pinup apparently got really claustrophobic wearing the mask and quit halfway through the movie. So one thing, the stunt double ended up playing part of that, but they ended up cutting. I don't know if they cut her scenes entirely or gave them to Dollface or somebody else. But apparently she was supposed to be in the movie a lot more, and they didn't have enough time to fuck around and find somebody else. So they just said, all right, well, that character's done. So that was like a choice that like I didn't really notice, but you're right. Like when you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, she's barely in the movie.
She's barely in the movie, and that annoyed me as hell because she's actually my favorite stranger. So I'm looking for her, and I'm not going to say she was the star of the original one because she definitely isn't. I would definitely say that the Dollface and the Man in the Mask get a lot more airtime than she does, but she's definitely in that film. I feel like she was in 2 scenes in this movie, and one of them she gets killed. So it's not really a lot of time for her to be in it. So that was really annoying. I thought, because I liked her as a character.
Yeah, no, they just didn't have an actress, and you think like, oh, how hard it is just to get somebody in a mask. Well, it's not that easy. Like it's acting. People like it's a different kind of acting to be acting wearing a mask where you need to express all of these things without facial expressions. So yeah, they just didn't have time to find anybody different. So they just said, okay, we're cutting that. But yeah, that's just one of those things that happens on a film. Like some shit happens, someone quits.
I did want to talk about a few things that annoyed me in this film,
Yeah,
like some tropes that they always creep up in these types of movies. So if you remember towards the beginning where Kinsey runs out because she's mad at the mom, and for some reason they send the weird creepy brother after her, and they decide to go for a walk. They go stumbling into one of the trailers. They find a dead body.
Well, first they find the bourbon and they drink it.
Yes. Good point. And then
actually, do they drink it? I don't remember. I know they.
I don't remember if they drink.
They're gonna drink it, and then shit happens. Yeah.
They run out, and they run into the parents, and they tell the parents that there's a dead body in one of the trailers. Now, again, this is going back to ignoring all the red flags, and all the parents are like, cut it out, stop it. Are you playing around? Is this a joke? Why would these kids be running around in the middle of the night in a trailer park, and they decide to play this prank on their mother and father that they had no clue were going to even be outside looking for them? So again, they ignore it, and the father, he just doesn't believe it. So he makes the son bring him to the trailer. So they split up. So they make the daughter and the mother go one way, and they go the other way. And then when they finally find the body, the father's like, oh, do you have your phone? Can you call the police? It's like you took all their phones in the beginning of the movie. And that is a trope I cannot get past. I will not ever agree with that because it would never happen in real life. You're never taking away someone's phones, to ignore technology. You can't ignore technology and lazy write it off by, all right, we're going to put all our phones in a bag and hide them in the closet. Like that would never happen in 2018 when this movie was filmed. It's a safety issue. Why wouldn't you want your daughter to have a phone just in case, she's walking around outside? Like, just why do that? It's such a cheap way to ignore technology, and I hate it.
Yeah, and that does get tough when you write these movies, right? Because most things are like, oh, why don't you just call so and so, and then this whole movie would be over. I didn't get as bad at that because I kind of just understood where he was coming from. Like they were all supposed to stay in the trailer. They weren't supposed to go wander off far away. So like the safety issue, and I do think the daughter like gave in a little early, but she was also probably thinking like, look, tomorrow I'm going to college. I never got to see these fuckers again. Like take my phone for tonight. I'm just gonna go like smoke some cigarettes and then go to sleep. So that kind of didn't bother me as much. It kind of made sense to me in the context of this that the dad just wants to have one last family time before they never see their daughter again, potentially, right? Before she goes off and becomes a woman and goes to college and forgets all about them. So I think he was just trying to like do that, and I wasn't as mad at that. I think again they gave in a little earlier. I feel like the girl would have threw a bigger tantrum, but it was believable. And it's funny, like I did think of that, like why did they split up? Like what would have been the better solution? They all go back to the cabin, call the police, and then go look. That's probably what I would have done. Or I just would have, I don't know. I guess I don't know what I would have
Just
done in
don't
that
go back
situation.
to, like, just don't go back to look at the dead body.
Yeah,
It's
why do you need to, right? Why
like,
can't
what
you
is
just
like, what is this? If the kid's willing to go back and make and call the police, then clearly it's not a joke. And when they're crying, and it's clearly not a joke. So it
yeah,
was
and would
it
it
was
be
kind of
that
silly for them to do that.
would it be that unbelievable that in this empty trailer park someone's dead? Like that wouldn't be that shocking to me. I wouldn't need to visually see it, and I would just be like, you know what? Maybe someone, maybe not even a murder, maybe someone just died, and I don't need to go investigate. So yeah, I think thinking clearly, I would have gone back together, called the police, let them figure it out, and I wouldn't have wanted to deal with it. I'm not as mad at that choice. Like people are kind of dumb. Like people aren't really thinking about this kind of shit. People didn't see The Strangers one, and they're not really thinking this is going to happen to them. So
They
I'm
should
not.
be in a world where that did exist, though, because it is 2018 technically, and they should have seen it if they like horror movies. Like, you could tell she's a little rebellious. She had that Ramones shirt on, so she might have been into horror films and watched them in her free time, even though when she does put on her iPod, which I thought I found pretty strange that there was an iPod in 2018. I don't think that was her phone.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I I still use an iPod, and
Damn, how do
I'm
you get
gonna
that thing to
be.
even connect?
It's like everybody makes fun of me for it. I still use it, and I'm gonna be sad when it breaks. And the reason is like I don't like using my phone more than I need to because the more you use it, the more the battery drains, and then I need a new phone. So I actually have I have an old phone I use for my alarm clock. I have an iPod. Like I have a lot of devices just so I could preserve this fucking iPhone as long as possible, so I don't have to spend another $1,200 on one. Um, so what else did you like about this movie? I think you said
All
there were a
right.
couple things.
The man in the mask, he's chasing down Kinsey. She's running, he's in the truck. This happens in every single horror film ever. And I never understand this. It's like, yes, I'm not an idiot. I understand that the car is faster than someone running, but a car cannot maneuver anything like a human being. And I just don't understand that outside of like a straight run, how anyone would get caught. Like she could have ran anywhere and got away. And somehow she found herself in a precarious situation where he was like right behind her, and she hid in that tube, which was like 5 feet away from where he was. And then I guess Pinup Girl was sitting in there like Scooby Doo for like 6 hours,
Yeah.
waiting for someone to finally hide there. But and then she pops out. But I just don't understand. Like in every horror film, there's always like some sort of car chase scene. It's like, how do you get caught by a car? And you guys could email me and tell me an asshole, I don't know what I'm talking about. I could tell you right now, I could turn, go left, go backwards. A car cannot do that at the ability that I could do it. I could get into areas where a car cannot fit. I could climb things. I could do 100 things besides getting caught. And I just get so annoyed that it's always like, here comes the truck. They can't lose it. They cannot lose the truck. Get out of here.
Yeah, and I think it happens twice in the movie where she's getting chased by the truck and she's on foot and she's running on the road and not running off the road. I would have ran off the road because he can't drive off the road. Yeah. And she even at one point at the very end is like running across that bridge. Like, why? Like, I would have run yeah, run around it.
Or jumped
Like,
off the bridge,
yeah,
anything, like
anything.
literally
Yeah.
anything that a car cannot drive on. It was so silly. And I just hate that that's like still, it's still a thing. Like, why is that still a thing? We could get away from cars. I don't think it's ever happened in life that, a car caught a person because you could just turn. You could just turn
Yeah,
and the
you could
car
run into the
cannot.
woods or wherever. Like, you don't need to stay on the path, the one road in the entire town. Like, you don't need to stay on it. Yeah, that pissed me off too. I mean, look, 16, 17-year-old girl, 17-year-old girl, she's going to college. But yeah, she should know enough that like just turn left. You're right. Absolutely right. That was silly. That was
Anything.
silly.
I mean, climb like they always run towards the fence where they get stuck. They don't know what to do. It's like just turn around, man. The car has to stop, go in reverse, turn around, and then come back after you. By then, you could go in numerous directions that the car cannot. So it was pretty silly that they still do that. And one last thing that annoys me, and this happens all the time, and of course it happened here. So that scene that you're talking about where Kinsey was running down the road, and the cops finally show up, right? Do you remember that? So the cops show up, right? What does he do? He does what every single person in every single horror movies does, that is driving a car. He doesn't put the car in park. He has to turn the ignition off. And take the keys or whatever? Like, why does this happen every single time? It doesn't matter if you like you see someone is covered in blood, you see someone is in distress. Why wouldn't you be in some sort of ready situation where you could just hop in the car and pull away? Why would you take the keys out of the ignition? Why would you stop the car? And what happens in, maybe not this film, but what happens in every film? The car doesn't start again. There's some sort of issue. Something dumb happens. Why did you do that? Why didn't you just put it in park? Park is okay. You cannot go wrong with park.
I do though. I do like the scene though where she's in the car looking for the keys, and then the killer like knocks on the window and he's like holding the keys. I thought that was cool. Like,
It was cool, but the keys should have been in the ignition running because the cop was just picking up this girl. He wasn't like, stopping to get lunch. He was just picking up this girl that was in distress. Like, I think the first thing he should have been thinking is, I need to get this person to safety really, really quick, or I need to get this person medical help. And you just keep the car running, get him in there and take off. And that's never the situation. And of course, he's like an idiot and he's not paying attention to his surroundings, so he gets killed in like 3 seconds because he's like it's so annoying how focused he is on her. I've seen this movie quite a few times, but I guess I never really paid attention to the cop. But you could see he does not break eye contact with like her eyes. Like, he is just staring because he is trying to look at everything, nothing else but her, to ignore the person coming up right behind him. That is so obvious. It's like in the peripheral. It's right there. You can see everything that's going
yeah,
on.
because you're out
But
in the
he's
middle
just
of the
like,
open. You're out in the
yeah,
open. You would totally
yeah.
catch that.
He is like locked in, like eye to eye with her, and she's like freaking out, but he will not break eye contact just to like set up this scene where he could get killed. And it's stupid. It's a little stupid.
Yeah, I will say the last like 10 minutes does get a little ridiculous. It doesn't mean I don't like it. I actually enjoyed it. It's entertaining. Like, I could probably do without the very ending, which is like reminiscent of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? Where like, the killer hops into the truck with her and she's got to like do the final thing. At the very end when she ends up in like the hospital, I could do this, like, not necessary. Like, it just didn't need all of that. I think there might have been more stuff that they cut out that they were going to have happen in that hospital that they just ended up not shooting or just not using. Like, I think there was supposed to be more there. Once he like gets out of the car and is like burning, and then she like fucks him up, like, or he just drops dead, like, it could have just ended there. Like, that was enough. Like, you don't need to, like, he's not Jason, like, let him be dead and that be done with it. Like, I do think it kind of gets a little cartoony towards the end. It doesn't take away from my enjoyment of the movie, but I remember rewatching it, and I'm like, oh, I know Jerry's not gonna like the last like 10
It's
minutes. I
like,
know
it
he's gonna
was
talk shit about it.
I did not like the last 10 minutes. So yeah, this is definitely another one of those movies where I watched like the first hour I leave that mistake of the last 20 minutes to them. That's for them to live with, not me. I'll enjoy the parts I enjoy, and they have to live with their mistakes in their direction and filming.
It's interesting. So like they do that, the ending, which again I think is a tribute, or at least inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The first Stranger starts with the opening narration, which is reminiscent of Texas
Sounds
Chainsaw Massacre.
exactly like Texas.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the same actor doing the voiceover. I couldn't find that information on who did it, but it sounds just like him.
Sounds like him, yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. It was a weird choice for The Strangers, and I think again they were probably just fans of that movie and then just wanted to like do that. But I thought it was interesting that they did another throwback to Texas, and I think this was a different filmmaker for this one.
It's a different director. So this is Johannes Roberts, and from what I understand, he only directs horror. I couldn't find any other type of films that he made. So he did some like VHS films, 47 Meters Down, Resident Evil. So he just really focuses on horror. So I could see why he threw in some of those like nods to Texas. And that last scene is totally Texas. It was, she's screaming, they're pulling away, and I believe they took the keys at the ignition in that scene too, which is a bit annoying, but they do get away.
So yeah, so like, look, I wouldn't say this is like the perfect movie. I think it's a fun movie. It's not one I watch all the time. I do enjoy it every time I watch it. I wouldn't say like it's a must-watch movie, but it's one I do like very much, and I do like it better than The Strangers, which is interesting because I will say The Strangers is a must-watch movie if you're a horror fan. I think it's a must-watch movie. I like this one better, but I wouldn't necessarily say it's a must-watch because I think I like it, but I know a lot of people do not for, again, because it is a little more over the top. It's a little more cartoony. It's a little more fun. It's more violent. It's a sequel. Like, it has its own problems. Like, it's not really, I wouldn't say it's well written, but it's well done. And I give it a 4.
Wow, a 4. I was not expecting that. Okay. Yeah, I like this. I like this film. I did see this in the theaters, and I thought it was super effective in the theater. And I remember I went with my wife, and I don't think I remember ever seeing someone so petrified in my life, where she wouldn't even move. Like, she was like scared to take a sip of soda. Like, that's the tension that was being created in this film. So to me, I was enjoying the film for different reasons, but when I see it have that sort of someone get that reaction from watching it, I'm like, man, this is good. So I have watched it several times since then. Like it a lot. Some problems, not enough for me not to like it. So I'm giving it 3.5.
Okay, that's more than I thought you would. So that's good. One thing I'll add to that too, it's always fun to watch a horror movie with someone who's not necessarily a horror fan. Doesn't mean they're like not horror exposed. Like, I know your wife watches a lot of horror films, but I wouldn't say she's necessarily a horror fan.
She's
But
not
it's
a horror
cool.
fan.
It's cool to see a non-horror fan affected by a movie, and you're just like chilling right there. Like, that's a great feeling, because then you're like, see, now you know why I like these movies. You think they're all trash, but like, I get you.
You think you're seeing things because it's like I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying it because I'm laughing because like they turned the ignition off, but she's living it, and that's a lot different. And she's so scared that like she won't even want to like take a bite of popcorn because she's living that moment of thinking about like what she would do if she took the key out of the ignition. And I'm thinking, what an idiot. And I mean, to see it have that effect, I think made me enjoy it quite a bit. And like I said, I rewatched it many times. I'll keep rewatching it. I'm excited that there's going to be some new additions to this world, and I envision a day where I get to marathon all of them, and I think that will be a lot of fun. So I'm excited for that.
Cool. All right. So just to recap, I'm going to drink for 3.5 seconds. Jerry's going to drink for 4. I don't know who you picked to drink with at home, but cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Woo.
Man, I did not get through this entire bottle.
Should we do another episode? Should we talk about another movie?
I will bring this back. So is my goal to get rid of this terrible Heaven's Door bourbon, unless they would like to sponsor us. And in that case, it is quite delicious and tasty, and I wouldn't mind a case of it sent to my house, and you could hit up the Horrorheads email to find out what that is.
That's horrorheadspodcast@gmail.com. So this is episode 8. When we do episode 13, we're going to do our Friday the 13th episode. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of drinking there. So you might want to bring multiple different things to drink. And this could
Bring a
be
friend too.
Yeah. Make it a party. So you might want to finish it that night then if you need something to drink. I think we may have a special guest on the next episode. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about yet. But really good friend of mine, screenwriter, director Jamie Greff, is probably going to come on with us and hang and drink some stuff. So looking forward to that.
That's exciting, man. This was a lot of fun. Happy to talk about strangers, and I'll see you for the next one.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Night, everybody. Woo.